Maureen, it's lovely to see you again. I first met you back in 2008 when you launched your first book, Escape to Provence. Now, you published this by yourself. How easy was it to do that?
Well, thank you, Anna. It's lovely to be here with you. Publishing, self-publishing, and this was total self-publishing. We didn't employ an outside firm or anything like that. We did it all ourselves. And so basically, once I'd finished the text and I realized that no agent or publisher was going to take on an unknown biographer and publish their book, I decided to do it myself. And one of the reasons for that was that I always had a picture in my mind of how I would present this book on Winifred Fortescue and Elizabeth Starr. I wanted it to look Provençal. I didn't want it digitally printed.
So you were totally in control?
Yes, I mean, if you publish it yourself, you are totally in control. Now, there are a lot of things that go with that. To start with, it's the cost. So you have to put money aside. We didn't have holidays or anything like that. So money has to go aside for that. Also, I wanted it to be illustrated. I wanted a certain type of paper of a certain weight. So basically, what we did once, as I say, the text was finished, we hired an editor, an indexer, a designer. We visited several printers all over the south of England and basically just pulled it together.
Now, your book focuses on the history of the French Riviera. What drew you to write about these two female characters, Lady Fortescue and Elizabeth Starr, because they were extraordinary women?
Yes, they were, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to know more about them. We came here in 1977, and one of the things that us expatriate women did was to work at the book sales once a month at Sunnybank Anglo-American Hospital, which was then in Cannes. And we used to fight over Winifred Fortescue's books. I had never heard of her before. And the most popular book, of course, was her bestseller of the 30s and 40s, Perfume from Provence.
Yes.
And as I began to gather some of these books together, I suddenly realized that she and her friends had lived on what became known to the locals as La Colline des Anglais, the Hill of the English, in Opio, the next village to ours. So I scampered up to Opio and began knocking on the doors of the hill. And really, I found people very open and very helpful and friendly. And they gave me leads to some of the people that had lived there, where they were now. And it really went on from there. It was like a small snowball that became an enormous one.
But with yourself, you lived here for 22 years yourself, and you must have done a great deal of research. Now, when you look at the Riviera, people always think of it as a now place. You know, you see what's happening today. How different and how many changes are there between the Riviera Provence in the 1900s to today, in fact?
An enormous difference. The Riviera became a place for moneyed socialites who came down here initially for the winter season, and then, of course, with the Americans in 1920.
So still that glamour?
Oh, a lot of glamour. A lot up to the beginning of the Second World War. You had 2 decades of very privileged people, incredibly sociable, who moved between the houses and, met each other constantly and entertained. And of course the Bentleys and the Hispano-Suizas and so on cruised along the Croisette. And there are wonderful books about this era. Now, the Second World War changed everything, basically, because the vast majority of these people left. And afterwards, although some came back to reclaim their houses, a lot of them were old by then and were beginning to die off. You didn't have this wonderful swell of sociability along the Riviera after 1945, and the expatriates that came from that period onwards tended to move into the hills, where they are now. I think one of the reasons could have been price on the Riviera, which of course The prices went up and up as time went on. And I think a lot of the new expatriates just loved the tranquility and the beauty of the hills.
You are, as you said, writing your next book. Now, is that a continuation of the story of Lady Winifred Fortescue and Elizabeth Starr, or is this a completely new story about the history of the Riviera?
It's a completely new story because Elizabeth and Winifred lived a bucolic rural life in the hills, and this project is about Barry Dierks, an American architect, and his partner in life and business for lifelong, basically, who was a Colonel Eric Sawyer, an Englishman. So again, an American and an English person, but this time living right down on the Estoril in their dramatic house set into the Red Rocks at Miramar, which is after Théo.
Yes.
And I visited there last week, and it is spectacular. So basically it's the story of their lives. Now Barry Dierks is almost forgotten, but in fact he did during the 20s, 30s and into the 40s, a little bit in the 50s before he died. He built or restored about 100 houses along the Riviera. And one of his most striking houses is the Villa Aujourd'hui, and that is
Aujourd'hui today.
Yes, Aujourd'hui today, and that was built for an American woman and bought later by the film producer Jack Warner. And it's easy to see because it goes along, it follows the main road at Cap d'Antibes. It follows the sinuous line. It's a wonderful white sinuous building, and at the back there's no garden. It drops into the sea, but this is where all the great stars, you know, of that era used to sit and sunbathe, Marilyn Monroe and so on and so forth. And that, I think, that is probably the jewel in his crown. But he did others, and the main thing is to write about the houses where people lived who were the most interesting. So it's a case of choosing the houses, but choosing the people who lived in them who have a story of their own.
And when are you launching this book?
I've done the research. I've got to start writing it. And this one cannot be self-published. So I've got to find an agent and a publisher for this.
It's going to be a very, very exciting project, and I know I'll be looking forward to this next book.
Oh, thank you.
Maureen Emerson, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Well, lovely to be here, Anna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.